With the merge for Ethereum scheduled in less than 3 weeks, I will today give a quick overview of what the merge is all about and about which chances and risks I see associated with this event. My name is Lucas, and here at The Wealthineer we look at all things blockchain and the path towards the metaverse. I'm just an enthusiast, I'm not a financial advisor, so take this information only as educational content and not financial advice. Furthermore, I want to mention that I hold ETH as part of my portfolio, but I try to be as objective as possible. I value your time, and therefore I've put timestamps in the description below. So if you are in a rush, feel free to skip ahead. But I would highly appreciate it if you stick for the whole video, so the YouTube algorithm will push it out to more people. With all this stuff out of the way, let's dive right into it. So, what is the merge actually all about? What is scheduled to happen on the 15th of September 2022? The Ethereum blockchain is undergoing an update that will transition its consensus algorithm from proof of work to proof of stake. This consensus algorithm is necessary to find out which transactions are valid in a decentralized manner. This means from this day on, there will be no more miners using huge amounts of energy and running very expensive equipment to try to solve cryptographic puzzles just to figure out who is allowed in the end to validate a block of transactions and put them on the blockchain. Instead, with proof of stake, after the merge went through, an algorithm selects randomly certain validators who have staked at least 32 ETH to validate a block of transactions and add it to the unchangeable ledger of the blockchain. So, what does this actually mean for Ethereum as a network? First, the energy consumption of the blockchain will go down by 99.95% according to the Ethereum Foundation. This means when you look at this chart, you can see that when you compare it to YouTube, to Bitcoin proof of work mining, to Ethereum proof of work mining, and then you look all the way to proof of stake mining, the energy consumption that will be consumed from that day on are pretty much insignificant. Second, Ethereum does not anymore need to compensate miners for the use of insane amounts of energy and running expensive equipment to secure the network, but they can reduce this issuance by a lot because running an Ethereum node is much cheaper. This means in practice, before that, Ethereum still issues about 14,600 ETH per day to compensate miners and the people who already started staking on the beacon chain. From the day of the merge on, the issuance that is distributed to miners will be no more. This means in practice, reducing the amount by 13,000 ETH per day will means a reduction of the issuance of new ETH by 89%. But in my opinion, it's also important to know what is not happening at the merge. Because when you look on Twitter, when you look in the mainstream media, there is a lot of things assumed that would also happen on the merge that's actually not true. For example, you won't see any improved or significantly improved transaction speeds or therefore reduced gas prices during a high usage. This is scheduled to be introduced with sharding that will come later on. Furthermore, you will not be able, if you staked on the beacon chain, to withdraw your ETH. This is also something that will be introduced in an update that is coming later on. Such a big update is of course not without risks. First, you have the technical risk. Even though we had a lot of successful dress rehearsals on the various testnets of Ethereum, there is a non-zero chance that there might be happen something from a minor hiccup to a severe issue during the merge day. Second, related to the topics I mentioned in what is not happening at the merge, there is a possibility that some participants in the space will be heavily disappointed because they assume Ethereum would have more transactions, and they would assume that they could already withdraw ETH from the beacon chain and so on. And if they figure out that's not the case. They might be angry, might do bad reporting in the mainstream media and stuff like that. So this is another risk I see. But third, in my opinion, biggest and more significant risk comes from the centralization risk vector that will be introduced after the merge. With proof of work, you can go buy some hardware and just start mining. I mean, I hear you say, well, you need a lot of equipment to be relevant in this space. That is true. But you don't need any assets that are controlled by the network itself. So if you want to start staking ETH, you need ETH to do so. So if someone is controlling a large amount of ETH, we would assume maybe even the majority of this ETH, and they are not selling to you, you have no chance to break their monopoly. Because with proof of work, you could just spin up more and more hardware and try to compete. But if someone has a majority and he gets, therefore, the most from staking back, so this stack will increase, and there is no chance you have to compete with that. Because compared to proof of work, where people need to sell their ETH to keep the operations running, you have no such high costs that force you to sell anything. So you can just keep it and stake forever and accrue more and more ETH over time and start to become an even larger player in the space. With a lot of people not willing to spin up their own validator, either because it's too complicated to do it technically, or it is just too much ETH to start all along, there is a new industry that has flourished that enables people to stake a certain amount of ETH on their behalf and earn the rewards minus a certain fee. So players like Lido Finance, like Coinbase, like Binance have accumulated a large amount of ETH that they are staking at the moment, and where they control the validators. In light of the recent ban from the US government of Tornado Cash and the reaction from US entities who had to adhere to that ban because otherwise the responsible people would have ended up in jail, a big issue to the network. Because if Lido Finance, based in the US, Coinbase, based in the US, Kraken, based in the US, if those get a letter from the US government that says, hey, we need you to censor certain transactions on the network, otherwise you're going to jail, there is a high probability that those entities would comply, because what else should they do? So with Coinbase having 15%, Lido controlling 30%, and Kraken controlling 9% of all validators that are up and running at the moment, we have more than 50% of all validators controlled by US entities. This means there is a risk that if the US government wants something censored on the network layer, they would probably be able to force enough entities that control validators to do that. This is a serious issue, but in my personal opinion, I think we're not worse off than before, because if the US just wants to shut down a certain network, they would do that anyway. If they want to force a certain amount of censorship on it, they would do that by just telling all the US companies, and I mean a lot of blockchain startups are currently based in the US, if they just force those to make sure they are not interacting with anyone who has done anything they don't like, then, I mean, what should we do here? Because, I mean, most of us, at least, are, I think, not hardcore enough to say, well, for my beliefs of decentralization, I would go to jail. Furthermore, I'm a developer, so when you look at Web 2 at the moment, who is running the whole infrastructure for all the applications that are running globally? Most of the hardware is coming from AWS, from Google Cloud, from Azure. Those three big tech giants are all based in the US, so if the US wants to shut down anything, they can do that. So from a developer perspective, we are not worse off than in the Web 2 world, but we have the potential, if we solve this centralization. For example, if people start to withdraw from Lido Finance once this is possible, when they start to withdraw from the exchanges once this is possible, and spin up their own validators, then we should be fine in the long run. If the US government decides to attack before that, well, then we are out of luck. But I think if they want to do that, they would do it anyway. Enough doom and gloom for now. Let's look at the bright side of this. So what do I see as the big chances for this update? First, the miners are gone. There is no more issuance of 13,000 ETH per day that is mostly sold because miners have to pay for their energy bills, they have to pay their mining rigs, and therefore they can't keep the Ethereum. They get it, they sell it every day. So when you look at 30,000 Ethereum that's issued per day, and I would assume most of it is sold because how else they should be able to run their expensive operations. When we look at ETH price of 1,500 per ETH, this would be 19.5 million of sell pressure per day. If we look at the prices near the top, like $4,500 per Ethereum, it's even 58.5 million that is sold every day by miners just to keep going. And if we are not able to find buyers for those 19.5 million at the moment, 58.5 million during the peak of the bull run, then the price drops. Just by that. Just because we have new issuance, miners selling them, and no one buying it. So if we currently keep the price stable, we find some people who are willing to spend $20 million a day to buy Ethereum. So with the miners gone, that sell pressure is gone. So if we are at an equilibrium where people are currently buying 20 million, miners selling 20 million, and the miners are gone, what stays here? Well, we are going up because the supply is lower, the demand stays the same, and it's a lot easier for Ethereum to rise. And what is also important to notice, if the price rises, this sell pressure grows because the 13,000 Ethereum is constant. Constantly, every day, 13,000 Ethereum are dumped on the market. If the price is 10 times as high, it's 10 times as much fiat we need to find to buy this Ethereum from miners, otherwise price goes down. So with this pressure out of the way, we might even see a situation where if the price rises rapidly, it's not bound to crash that hard anymore because we don't have the miner part getting heavier and heavier and in the end weighing down the price action. But the second point is much more important to me as a developer because I think with less energy consumption, a lot more companies will be able to adopt Ethereum because a lot of customers are currently very environmentally aware. So this means if a company uses Ethereum and NFTs and those customers perceive from the media that if they use NFTs, they are using a irreasonably high amount of energy to do so, they won't do that, they will backlash at the company. And with this issue out of the world, I think a lot of companies could look into adopting NFTs, tokens, blockchain technology in general, and start to grow the whole space, start to grow the adoption in the mainstream. So I think that's great. Furthermore, when you look at ESG, and ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance, and that's a framework that a lot of institutional investors use to judge how sustainable a certain asset is. If we now look at Ethereum compared to Bitcoin, where the energy consumption is a lot less, what do you think those institutional investors would think? Well, I would assume they say, well, that's the better asset because it does something similar and it removes all the energy consumption from it, or at least a majority of the energy consumption. So I'm quite positive that it will be now easier for asset managers and institutional investors out there to add Ethereum to their portfolios. So all things considered, I think the merge could lead to broader adoption of Ethereum, as well as have a positive impact on the price action. However, we should never forget that there is a real centralization risk present, and we have to somewhat deal with it, because otherwise that could be an existential threat to the network in the long term. So what do you think about the merge? Do you agree with my take? Or did I miss something important? Drop it in the comments below. And if there's nothing important to say, just drop an emoji. That would help me with the algorithm. That would be really awesome. If you think this video was helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and if you want to be updated once I got new content, then hit that bell icon too, so you don't miss another video. This is it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I see you in the next video. Bye.